It's hard to hear the word 90s basketball and not think of Shawn Kemp and Gary Payton. Yes, I know there is no bigger trend in basketball right now than dumping on the 90s and saying that Michael Jordan wasn't very good and he couldn't go left. I saw someone say that Jalen Green makes better shots than Michael Jordan on Twitter the other day, and I was like, all right, I'm done with Twitter today. They want to say that he only played against plumbers, but let's be honest. The 90s paved the way for the basketball we are seeing today, just like the 80s paved the way for the 90s and the 70s paved the way for the 80s. You paved the way each and every generation. One day we're going to say in the 2040s that LeBron James was a plumber, and it's going to be stupid because every year, every generation just gets better. But let's be honest, before Zion Williamson was throwing down dunks and getting random women pregnant, Shawn Kemp was doing the same. And sorry that joke was on a platter for me. I had to go there. But really, before Zion, it was Blake Griffin. And before Blake Griffin was Shawn Kemp. He paved the way for them all. And what can you say about Gary Payton? He was the definition of cool. He was the definition of swag. He made Draymond Green, well, not quite look like a choir boy, because no one can make Draymond Green look like a choir boy, but you get the point. He made Draymond Green look tame. That was 90s basketball. And Shawn Kemp and Gary Payton, frankly, made Seattle rock, made the Key Arena rock, and made myself, fall in love with basketball. And there were so many reasons for that. The swag, the high-flying dunks, the colors of the Seattle Supersonics, man. It was just so great. But just how good were Shawn Kemp and Gary Payton? And as always, I like to give 3 facts and 3 opinions. Let's talk about the 3 facts with the Seattle Supersonics. Fact number 1, the 1996 Sonics were really freaking good. 64-18, which was right now would be the 26th best record, so the 26th best regular season team of all time. Pretty good. But at that time, they were the 11th best regular season team in NBA history. And of course, they met their match with the 1996 Chicago Bulls, who are arguably the best team in NBA history. A lot will say the 73-9 Warriors, but they did not win the NBA championship like the Bulls did. So they just completed, at the time, the best record ever and winning the championship. Let's talk about Gary Payton. One of his really great facts: 9-time All-NBA first-team defense. The most ever for a point guard at the time, and now CP3 also has 9-time all-defensive team. So him and CP3 are the 2 best defensive point guards of all time. But the difference is Gary Payton actually won a Defensive Player of the Year award, and that's so rare because you guys probably know if you watch basketball, it's not like they're giving Defensive Player of the Year awards to guards. Usually they're reserved for centers and bigs. And Shawn Kemp, during his time in Seattle, I want you to hear about the durability, because these days players never do this anymore. So he played, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 seasons in Seattle and played the following games: 81, 81, 64, 78, 79, 82, 79, 81, and 80 games. Pretty remarkable. It's just an absolute testament to durability, which is something we don't really necessarily see as much anymore in the NBA. And just goes to show the Sonics were good. The Sonics had one of the best defensive players ever, and they had a star who was absolutely durable. So let's go to our 3 opinions about the Seattle Supersonics and Shawn Kemp and Gary Payton. Opinion 1 was, I feel like just maybe growing up in Seattle and being around everything that happened with Shawn Kemp and Gary Payton and how the city really just kind of just rallied around these two, was I thought that was going to be good enough to save basketball in Seattle, and it wasn't. And I know there's so much more politics that have gone into that. Howard Schultz, the Starbucks fiasco, Clay Bennett, the Oklahoma City Thunder, David Stern. But I just thought, just like Ken Griffey Jr. was able to save baseball in Seattle, I felt like the legacy of Shawn Kemp and Gary Payton would hopefully be good enough for basketball to be saved in Seattle. And unfortunately, I was wrong about that. It wasn't. But when they finally do bring the Sonics back one day, I think that Shawn Kemp and Gary Payton will be honored to be part of the organization in a really good way. Number 2, the Shawn Kemp and Scottie Pippen trade. is one of the biggest what ifs in NBA history because we have no idea what would have happened to that 96 Bulls, the 97 Bulls, 98 Bulls, or the 96, 97, and 98 Sonics, which we could have seen a scenario where Scottie Pippen and Gary Payton are playing on the Sonics, and we don't know how they mesh. And then you have Michael Jordan and Shawn Kemp leading the Bulls, and that means where's Dennis Rodman fitting in because he plays Shawn Kemp's position. It's like one of those revolving doors in NBA history that I'm not quite sure what it would have really done for NBA history, but it's always on the back of my mind. What if Scottie Pippen, Shawn Kemp trade happened, and all of a sudden is Michael Jordan a six-time NBA champion? Is Shawn Kemp considered a top 25, 30 player of all time? What happens to Gary Payton and Scottie Pippen's legacies? There's just so many what ifs with that scenario that never happened. And last but not least, I think Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp would have just been better in this era. The 96 Bulls versus Sonics series was very interesting. And one thing I remember from that series, and you can go look it up, was Shawn Kemp was shooting really well. He was never a three-point shooter, but that series, he kind of hit some threes. He was kind of stepping back. And then Gary Payton, towards like his last days on the Sonics and his days on the Bucks and Heat and wherever else Gary Payton ended up like kind of jumping around Lakers in his career, he was shooting a lot more threes. And I just think he would have been a lot more effective in this era. Now, the defense with Gary Payton would have been, who knows, with the hand checking, but I still think he would have been a dominant guard. I think he's a better defender than Marcus Smart and a better scorer, and I just think they still would have been able to do a lot. And I think offensively is really where you would have seen that, because both of them offensively would have been so much better in this era because of the spacing. Shawn Kemp would have been able to run the floor more, less fouls. They both would have scored more. So it would have been really interesting to see both of those guys in this era. So that is just how good Shawn Kemp and Gary Payton were. So I hope you enjoyed this video. My name is George on Tap. This is Hoops on Tap, my basketball channel. Make sure you like and subscribe. This is part of the bigger The Sports on Tap network. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a comment. How do you think Shawn Kemp and Gary Payton would do in this era? Thank you for watching. You can follow me on social media everywhere at George on Tap, and we'll see you guys next time.